Welcome back, boxing fans, to another great show with Sean on boxing. I hope you've been enjoying my content for the past week. Obviously, there's a lot of new videos uploaded, so go check them out. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. We'll be back after this short message, so stay tuned till then. Welcome back. So we got a lot of information, interesting information for this weekend. Obviously, a big fight card coming out of the UK, and then a lot of other information that is just broke this week that we're going to be discussing, giving our opinion in on, and looking deep. So stay tuned. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Jump on and join the chat. And remember, if you don't catch the live, leave your comments in the comment section below, and I will get to you later. So let's see who's in the house at this time of morning. Nobody yet. So let's get to it. So obviously this weekend we have the fight between Jack Catterall, and Regis Prograis. And this is really a crossroads for Regis Prograis. I think most boxing fans realize that because him coming off of that very disappointing, very poor performance against Devin Haney really sort of didn't end his career, but it really put him in a position where at the 140-pound division, he was no longer a player. He was no longer somebody that people gravitated to and were pushing as one of the best fighters in the weight division. And it sort of took away some of the charm about what kind of fighter was he really. Because if you really look closely at his resume, the two big fights he had in his career, you could say he lost both of them, right? Obviously against Taylor and against Haney. This is a guy that tried to do pay-per-views. People tried to push as the face of 140 pounds, but yet somehow it never really translated with boxing fans. And obviously he was coming off of a poor performance prior to stepping in with Devin Haney, which if you really watch boxing, at that point you should have saw how, yeah, if this fighter was able to do that with Prograis, imagine what Devin Haney's going to do. And that's exactly what Devin Haney did. Harder Corals in the house. Wayne Evans, what's up? Machado, what's up? Shit, I work in 3 hours and I tried to sleep. You work in 3 hours? Wow, you're working night shift? Because right here it is 10:40 Taiwan time, Saturday morning. So what do you guys think about this Catterall Prograis fight? I'm going out on a limb, even though I don't really think it's much of a limb. Obviously, we know that when Prograis went to the UK in his past fight, he lost a close competitive fight with Taylor. We know that Catterall, obviously, people believe he beat Taylor in the two fights he faced him. You can't really use the triangle theory to really talk about boxing, but what you can talk about is the style that Catterall fights is going to be difficult for Prograis, right? Catterall is a long guy who fights behind a jab, controls the distance, and Prograis is a counterpuncher. So based on how successful he was in his last two fights, you could just assume that he's going to be equally as successful in this fight. So I am picking Catterall to win this fight. I do think he's probably going to win by decision. He is obviously feeling himself, feeling very good, very confident, coming off of very good victories, whereas Prograis is coming off of a very disappointing loss. Obviously, he's got a lot of excuses about Haney being a weight bully and this and that, but when it comes down to it, you have to hold yourself accountable for your performance, and his performance was poor. Uh, Black American God FBA says, "You thought I was done with you, YT boy." I don't understand some of the people that roam around and pretend to be boxing fans. Let's see if he can actually make a boxing comment. Machado says Catterall for the win. DJ Mexicano de Texas says, "Hola, Sean, ¿qué pasa?" Not much. It's my weekend, kicking back, enjoying it. Obviously, we got some boxing to look forward to this weekend. We will look at the rest of the card as well. David says Prograis will lose, but I'm not betting on it. Catterall gives me hype job vibes. Neither guy is that good, though. I feel you. I was never a huge Catterall fan. I thought a lot of the hullabaloo about the first fight between him and Taylor was much to do about nothing, because I didn't think really he fought that much better than Taylor. You could have had him winning, or you could have had Taylor winning. I don't think anyone was dominant. And in the second fight, I thought it was equally as boring, and no guy was able to really grab the bull by the horns. Black American says, I got Prograis, but fighters usually ain't the same once they go toe to toe with the dream. Yeah. I mean, Lomachenko definitely wasn't the same. He went in there and did something the dream couldn't do. Literally stopped George Kambosos. The narratives, the dream. I mean, I find it funny because when I look at John Boxing and these other people trying to create this racial narrative on YouTube, acting as if there's this black and white split in boxing, the people I say see hating on black fighters more than anyone are other black fighters. I mean, Devin Haney fans consistently shitting on Tank Davis fans. Tank Davis fans consistently shitting on Devin Haney fans, right? We saw the same thing with Spence and Crawford. If you want to pick Prograis, I'm with you. Prograis got the opportunity to land a power shot that could change everything. But the problem is, if he's going to be so complacent and look for just a counter punch at this point of his career, he may be looking all fight and end up losing a decision, right? And that's the question you got to ask yourself. Loma never the same since that body shot. He want to retire now. Oh no, he did what Devin Haney couldn't do. Literally beat the crap out of Kambosos and stops him. But okay, the Dreams team of lawyers. What the hell does Virgil Ortiz want to do? If Catterall wins, no good future for Prograis. Well, if Catterall beats Prograis, especially in a convincing, dominating fashion like Haney did, that'll take away from Haney's performance. If Catterall struggles, that will benefit and build up Haney's performance. If Catterall wins, though, we can look forward to him doing what we expect, fighting in the UK. I don't know who he'll be in next with after that. Potentially the fighter from Australia, if he gets by Richard Hitchens. It's a fight that you could do in Saudi Arabia or the UK. But as far as American boxing fans are concerned, it's not really a fight that they're too interested in. Jaime says there's also a good UFC fight tomorrow. I don't hate on Tank. He is a young king. Right now, he is the face of boxing. Well, he's obviously not the face of boxing, but thanks for playing. I'm looking forward more to the UFC this weekend. Who's fighting on the UFC? I don't even know. So it can't be anybody that big, because if it's not Pereira, I don't know who it is. The dream won't be the same ever since Garcia snatched his pride and soul. Well, that's true. I mean, look what happened to Meldrick Taylor after his loss to Julio Cesar Chavez. I mean, don't be surprised if the Devin Haney that comes back is cracked, just like that Meldrick Taylor, and never able to sort of reach the heights that he once did. That would be disappointing and unfortunate because he's still a young fighter, but don't be surprised if that's what happens. I mean, this cap right now about the whole Ryan Garcia PED stuff, take the test, blah, blah, blah. Once again, what you're doing is capping for Ryan Garcia. Like, people are all over Ryan Garcia, criticizing him for the racial narratives and whatnot, but yet the person keeping him most relevant is Devin Haney and his dad, right? If they weren't capping so hard to get that fucking big pay-per-view money from fighting Ryan Garcia, most people wouldn't even be talking about Ryan Garcia. I mean, first it's Boots fight in Saudi Arabia, then it's manager who is annoying comes out and says he wants Virgil to fight Thurman. Now he's sensing an offer from Crawford. Tapori versus Holloway. That's UFC one. I've heard of Holloway, but I'm not that familiar with him. Devin is undefeated. Undefeated, but still not unbroken, right? That's the conundrum Devin Haney finds himself in. Sure, his resume is undefeated, but mentally, that dude is totally fucking defeated, totally broken. I mean, you can take a one off of a ledger, but you're not going to change the PTSD that brother suffered in that fight, right? You're not going to change that just because you got rid of a number on BoxRec. Oh yeah, speaking of Tank, his fight with Peterson is such a joke that they're going to pair it with Benavidez Morel fight. Peterson, who's Peterson? Sean Regis has never had the hype, but he is a damn good fighter. Well, at one time, people were trying to hype him, right? When literally Taylor and Ramirez were doing a lot in the sport of boxing, somehow certain people on YouTube were acting as if Regis Prograis was the guy that was really doing the heavy lifting and doing most of the work, right? That didn't live long or didn't pan out well, but nonetheless, Thurman at 160. I have Dev winning against Ryan, close fight. Yeah, I had Dev winning versus Ryan. The judges couldn't bail Haney out last time. Once the Morel Benavidez fight is over, that's going to be better than anything on Tank's resume. Supposedly the Tank fight is getting postponed. Oh, I meant Lamont Roach, not Peterson. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. Let's just move through and look at the rest of this card for a second. That's going to be happening, obviously, out of the UK. So Reese Bellotti is going to be fighting Michael Gomez Jr. Apparently, as a domestic level UK fight, this is pretty good. Bellotti has kind of reinvented himself, and apparently Michael Gomez Jr. His father was a good fighter. He's a solid fighter, and apparently it's a really good matchup. The guy I'm looking forward to is Pat McCormick, the UK silver medal winning Olympian. Very good fighter. He hasn't been nearly as active as I think he should be, but nonetheless, I'm happy to see him there, as well as Joe McGrail. And outside of that, everybody else, I think is mostly domestic level fighters that I'm not that familiar with. We also have a card coming from GGG's promoter. Omar Trinidad is fighting Hector Andres Sosa. And you have Yore Yetasanian, a very good young fighter, fighting Jonathan Romero. That fight could be fire, right? That could be probably the best fight of this weekend. Yetasanian versus Jonathan Romero. The rest of the card, again, not big names. Obviously, that promoter currently is working with the UFC, as you can see by this. It's another UFC boxing fight. And they're mostly trying to invest in some younger fighters. That Callum Wilson fighter from Ireland. Obviously, this guy, Omar Trinidad, and a few other fighters that they can develop and build into stars. Obviously, they don't want to pay big money for guys with name recognition at this point, because what would be the point, right? But those two cards, not bad. Obviously, this weekend is not a weekend full of huge fights, but nonetheless, we still got some very good fights. The Catterall Prograis fight, very good. We will see what happens. Here's a fight that happened yesterday, which I thought was funny, because I remember when one John Boxing said that Rashidi Ellis was better than Boots Ennis, and literally went on a rant talking about how Boots Ennis was overrated, not that good, and that Rashidi Ellis would beat him. Only for Rashidi Ellis to lose a controversial fight to Roman Villa, as you can see right there, who went on to get his ass beat up and stopped by Boots Ennis. He just had his first comeback fight after that Roman Villa fight, almost 2 years since that fight. And he wasn't able to do it on the PBC. He had to literally go over to some minuscule promotional company out of UMass to make this fight against some guy who was 14-6 with 6 KO losses, right? Because this is the level Rashidi Ellis was. This is why he couldn't be built up and turned into a superstar by Golden Boy. It wasn't because he was black. It's because he had no power. He wasn't that good, right? And this is the level that he is. He's not an elite, high-level fighter. And that was exposed, right? When he was thrown in with a bum-ass fighter like Romain Villa, who nobody ever heard of, and got dropped multiple times and wasn't able to easily or convincingly win that fight. So once again, thank you, Al Heyman. Al Heyman was being praised and was going to revolutionize this guy's career. And now, since working with Al Heyman, he's literally been out of the ring for 2 years. Yet it was Oscar De La Hoya that was holding him back. It was Oscar De La Hoya that was ruining his career. This is kind of like the whole Rigo situation. Bob Airman, Top Rank, ruined Rigo. But yet when Rigo was with Al Heyman, he didn't get Abner Mares, he didn't get Leo Santa Cruz. He didn't get Carl Frampton. He didn't get any of the big fights when he was part of the PBC, right? But somehow people consistently overlook this, all the cap for Al Heyman, because he looks like their daddy. And if you got daddy issues and you're looking for a father figure, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. They say Tank asking for too much money. Of course he is. He thinks he's a star because of the Ryan Garcia fight, which, thank you, Ryan Garcia. The only reason it was that successful was because of your opponent. We know that because we see every other pay per view you've done, which hasn't done over 300,000 pay per view buys, right? All bum fights. The whole McGrail family is probably chinless like Costa Zoo and his sons. That could be true, but they were good boxers, right? Long, lanky, a bit of power. I was kind of high on Peter McGrail kid till he lost to a cherry pick. Don't fight Haney, he might sue you. Ronald Ellis is a guy who went the distance with Benavides, almost inspired Canelo. I have put money on him to go the distance with Eric Benzinian, and he got chinned by him. What is next for the winner? Which winner? So, of course, we were talking about the Tank Davis Lamont Roach fight and how it's been canceled. They said there was venue issues, but obviously we know there's no venue issues. These guys get the venues locked down months and months before they make fights. That's why when the fights get made, they're so specific to the date because they can't change the date because they already got the venue set up. So this venue was set. So the issue was, as somebody mentioned in the comment section, uh, Tank Davis is overpricing himself. And this is the face of boxing. Never have you seen a situation where they said Canelo Alvarez had to delay or pull out of a fight because he was pricing himself out, right? But it's Tank Davis who's the face of boxing, right? They talk about, well, he's only fighting Lamont Roach because nobody else wants to fight him. Yet Tank Davis is the A side, isn't he? He's the guy that's got the PBC Al Heyman behind him, the guy that's saving boxing, right? So if that's the case, they can offer these fighters the money that's necessary to make them step up and take on the fights, kind of like Canelo Alvarez did. When Canelo stepped up, crossed over to the PBC, and paid Caleb Plant $10 million to do an undisputed unification fight, right? He did that even though he was the A side. He crossed over because he did what he had to do to make the fight. But yet somehow Tank Davis is not held to this same level of criticism. He doesn't need to do anything to make big fights. If big fights aren't made, it's everybody else's fault because they're not making the fights. Yet he's the A side. He's the one that's supposed to be offering the contracts. So what do you want the B side to do? You want the B side to offer Tank Davis the contract now, right? It's always great how these individuals move the goalpost depending on what fighter we're talking about. Ulysses Iglesias is fighting a pretty decent opponent in a couple weeks. He's from the Ukraine. It's good that they're keeping Iglesias so busy, right? I mean, that's pretty much the main thing you got to do because obviously this is a kid fighting in Germany. Nobody knows who the fuck he is, except, of course, for hardcore boxing fans like us. He's Cuban. So right there means he doesn't really have much of a fan base in the U.S. because we know Americans ain't really that interested in watching Cuban fighters, no matter how much they lie to you, because most of these fighters that were happy that William Skull was made Canelo's mandatory and Canelo got stripped because he didn't fight him, didn't even watch William Skull's fight against Shishkin to win the fight. Right? That's the irony. But here it is. He's fighting Petro Ivanov, 18-0-2. And it's not bad. Obviously, this is his 13th pro fight, 11 KOs in 12 fights, right? If you've ever watched Iglesias fight, you can't help but be impressed. He's a really talented looking fighter. You can compare him a lot to David Morrell, but obviously he's had similar amount of fights, but David Morrell's been around for much longer. Unfortunately, Morrell's been promoted by the PBC, so it took fucking years and years before he actually got fights that resonated. Now he's getting a fight that resonates. So who'd this guy fight previously? Dun, dun, dun. Nui Lau was once considered a good fighter, 9 losses ago before this. Okay, I mean, he's a opponent, that's for sure. I don't know what kind of quality of opponent he is, but nonetheless, fighting guys that are 14-8 with 9 coming from Colombia, he's going to fight a bunch of bum ass opponents. So there you go. That's what he's been doing in his last few fights. So, I think we all know what's going to happen in that fight. It will pretty much be clear that Iglesias is going to score another knockout, move to 13-0 with 12 KOs, and fight somebody in Europe, a Euro bum that nobody knows and nobody cares about. And then we're going to wonder why nobody's pushing to make a Iglesias fight, because no one's watching his fights. He's fighting in Germany. He's going to get mandated by the IBF, obviously, because we know that German promoter, all his fighters were mandated by the IBF. Ha. Where are we going? Catterall, Regis winner. I'm going with Catterall by decision. Machado says, exactly, if Tank was the face of boxing, he would have no problem making any fights. Exactly. Jay says, have the same outlook on the Canelo versus Benavidez situation. The A side has all the power. Yeah. What are you talking about? Canelo's not going around fucking capping, saying that David Benavidez doesn't want to fight me. Nobody wants to fight me, so that's why I'm fighting Joe Schmo. He's literally fighting fighters that sell as much as David Benavidez, right? Like, I know it's hard for you to understand, Jay, but literally the pay-per-view numbers wouldn't be that much different with David Benavidez, because David Benavidez is a fucking hype job who's getting pushed because people hate Canelo, not because they like David Benavidez, because he literally has done nothing until 2023. He's going to get beat by Morale, and then how fucking awkward is that going to be? How awkward is it going to be when David Morale fucking knocks his ass out, and then all that hype people have been pushing for Benavidez is going to come back and expose the bullshit narrative that all this guy ever wanted was a fucking cash out fight, just like everyone else. Sure, Canelo could totally make that fight, but he's the A side, so he fights who he wants. Unfortunately for Tank Davis, he don't have opponents that sell. That's why his fight's called off, and why he's literally going to be put on a double feature with fucking Benavidez and Morale, as if that's going to be a fight that sells. The only people that are interested in that fight are hardcore boxing fans. Casual fans don't know who fucking Morale is. David Benavidez could fight my fucking cousin, and it'd probably get as much attention as him fighting Morale, because nobody knows my cousin. Nobody knows fucking Morale, a guy who literally fights in the Midwest. Tellez and Iglesias are exciting, though. They are very good. The problem is they got to be promoted. At least that's what's going to help raise them. Tellez at least is fighting in the U.S. I watched the Skull fight. I bet a little money to go 12. Skull nearly fell apart. I heard that. Why is Davis' fight postponed? No money, or he's asking for too much money? Money and venue, they say. I thought the card was on ESPN and in Canada, the Iglesias fight. Iglesias doesn't fight out of Canada, though. He's German. He's based with a German promoter. So I can't imagine that fight's going to be in Canada. Don't let your A-side wife get all the power. I'm laying off Canelo even though he's not my favorite. Yeah, and you don't have to have favorites, right? Like, let's be real. Nothing is about favorites. Let's do a bet for Benavidez versus Morale, since you're so confident. Super confident. You don't even like Morale, J.A. I mean, Benavidez. Come on. Stop lying. Stop capping. It's pathetic we can't watch ESPN on both sides or outside the U.S. It's unfortunate for sure. I'll buy the Morale Benavidez fight. It's a great fight. Yeah, but that's because you're a hardcore boxing fan. Casual fans won't buy it because they don't know who the fuck that is. Makes you wonder why Loma went back after trying to negotiate with Tank. Because Tank came out and told you he wanted, what was it, $30 or $40 million to fight Lomachenko. Literally, Tank Davis came out on Twitter and fucking exposed himself, saying, I want this much money to fight Lomachenko. And this was after apparently the contracts were agreed to. So Lomachenko flew to the States to sign the contract, only for Tank Davis to literally come out with that. But people miraculously fucking ignore it and act like it didn't happen. We're bringing Iglesias back to Canada, I believe. Well, it'd be good if he comes back to Canada. He fought on the Mbili card. So did Abdullah Mason. I get the setup. Cleveland is close to Canada. 30, 40 million. Tank is the real diva at 135. Well, that's without a fucking doubt. And that's because that's what happens when you hang out with people that blow smoke up your ass, right? And act like you're a superstar. Act like you are the face of American boxing, even when clearly you're not, right? And this is no disrespect. You could still be one of the top fighters in boxing, but it doesn't mean you're the face of boxing. So here is the potential fight that may be happening in early 2025. And for me, this makes way more sense. I don't know why they just didn't do this to begin with. It was being speculated that Benavidez and Tank Davis would once again be on a doubleheader card in November or December. But of course, that opponent that Benavidez was fighting got such negative kickback that they went against that fight and then obviously did what they probably didn't want to do, which was take on Morrell, right? And now you have Davis versus another 130-pound fighter, and Benavidez and Morrell fighting, both coming off of less than stellar performances since they moved up to 175. But for American fans, this has some selling quality to it. Once again, Tank Davis, David Benavidez headlining a double feature. That's good. Then you know they're going to put fucking Lara against fucking Robert Guerrero on the undercard, right? You know, some fucking crazy shit. Obviously, there's been talk about potentially Charlo fighting Abel Ramos. I'm not sure if that would be on another card, but that would be a great fight. You have Charlo, Tank Davis, Benavidez all on a card together. I mean, that's quality. The only real legitimate 50-50 fight is Morrell Benavidez, but nonetheless, it's still a quality card. Well, no, I guess Ramos versus Charlo. I guess you have to say that's pretty much a 50-50 fight as well at this point. Mason is fighting on the same card as Iglesias again. Oh, really? Well, that's good, because if you tie yourself with Abdullah Mason, that's not a bad thing. And obviously tying yourself together with ESPN. Garden Snake Mentality says, I don't know. Benavidez didn't have to take Morrell. He could have fought Hart and waited to get better BF Bivol winner. But he was never going to fight them because he's a PBC fighter, right? He was never going to fight outside the PBC against a non-PBC opponent. Why did Morrell look so bad last fight against Hot Rod, who better BF stopped in 4? Let's be fair. Hot Rod is not a gut fighter that's easy to look good against because he doesn't come to win, right? And when you fight guys like that, it's difficult to land shots you need to land. And so it is what it is. Mason is fighting terrible opponents. So is Emiliano. Well, Emiliano is fighting terrible opponents. I mean, they're bringing that kid up slow. And meanwhile, he's on fucking Instagram showing off his fucking sports car. I mean, dude, you're living fucking beyond your means too early. Get your ass in the gym. We don't care that you fucking dressing fine and driving fucking fine cars and having sex with fine ladies. You should be in the gym because you haven't done shit. I have to call a spade a spade. Can't give these guys props till they step it up. Exactly. Ronnie Shields himself said Morrell wasn't ready for Benavidez. Okay, well, seeing is believing. Yeah, Ramos Charlo is a great fight. I forgot about that. I remember Canelo got $500 million contract. Yes, and then Mason is from Cleveland, which is next door to Canada. So bringing Iglesias back to Canada makes sense. Well, it doesn't make sense if your promoter is German. What makes sense is to build up his fan base, right, in Canada, the States, and Europe. And even though you're Cuban, if you're an exciting enough fighter that has a great style, hopefully fans will jump onto you and you'll become a crowd favorite, right? Kind of like we're seeing now with what's his face, the French Canadian fighter, and I mean French, not Canadian, Mbili, right? who similarly has built himself up a nice little fan base because of his exciting fights that he's been in. So for Iglesias, he's got to do something similar. He's got to showcase his style against a wide variety of fan bases and really show people that he is the real deal. And being at 168 pounds definitely does not hurt because there's money at that weight class. So you got to make sure you put yourself in a position to fucking cash out. Jay says Abdullah Mason can step up faster than Emiliano. Well, let's hope so. He's been a pro longer. Put him in against somebody like Petraza. Yeah, I think you could easily put him in with somebody like Petraza, but Petraza already been used for the Keyshawn Davis fight. So I don't know if Petraza would be very excited to take that fight at this point. But there's obviously a lot of other good fighters at 135, like Schofield, guys like that, real 50-50 fights, right? You put him in with Schofield, he beat Schofield in sensational fashion. That kid's going to rise into the top 10 at 135 pounds and start being talked about as fucking a potential pound-for-pound demon, kind of like Boots Ennis. Iglesias would smoke Billy, but I think they work together, so they won't ever fight anyway. Well, how do they work together if one promoter is Canadian, the other promoter is German? I mean, I know they might be put on the same cards together, but that doesn't necessarily mean you work together. Canelo Alvarez was used by Floyd Mayweather to sell pay-per-views for years, and they still ended up fighting each other on a huge pay-per-view. So here we are, some other potential news that's coming up. What do you guys think about this potential card in February 22nd? People are going to really blow smoke up that Tank Davis Benavidez fight and act like it's the best fight of 2025. But is it really the best fight of 2025? When you potentially have this fight card, AJ rematching Dubois too. I don't know if this fight's really going to happen because I've heard some speculation that they may wait to see if Fury loses and then obviously go for the Fury fight, which would be way bigger. I would prefer that he fought Wilder. You throw AJ Wilder on this card, I think it's bigger than Daniel Dubois. But that's just me. Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think? Then Shakur versus William Zepeda. Again, we know this is the fight that was scheduled to happen. Shakur was going to fight what's-his-face coming off of a knockout loss, Cordial, and then was going to fight William Zepeda, who obviously is fighting Farmer. So both guys were getting tune-ups, and then this was going to be the fight between the two of them. But because Shakur injured his hand, wasn't able to get his tune-up, I'm not sure if this fight's actually going to happen, if Shakur is going to jump straight in coming off of an injury against a guy like William Zepeda. But if he does, props to Shakur, because that's one of the most dangerous fighters at 135 pounds and a style that can beat him. Then, of course, you got the rumors recently, and it was mentioned earlier in our chat, about John Ennis potentially fighting Virgil Ortiz. I can understand why Turki Al-Sheikh would want to make this fight, because it's a fight that's long been discussed in the boxing world. But to be fair, yeah, okay, you want to give Boots Ennis a big fight, so I understand Matchroom trying to put him into this fight, even though I think what he has to do is build up his own legacy at 147 by unifying titles. Virgil Ortiz, obviously, he's in a position where he could fight Bud Crawford or Murtazaliev next for a 154-pound world title. Obviously, a Bud Crawford-Ortiz fight is way bigger than a John Ennis fight. So if you're going to use Virgil Ortiz, I can't imagine why you wouldn't use him in a Bud Crawford fight, because that fight sells fucking outside of America, sells in America, right? That is probably the best, most marketable opponent on Bud Crawford's resume outside of Errol Spence. And because of the racial diatribe between, Mexico and Black American, maybe it's even more marketable than Errol Spence versus Bud Crawford, right? Maybe. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And then, of course, you got Bam Rodriguez fighting Chocolatito, which we know this is a promotional issue because they're both promoted by Tekken Promotions, who does not like to put their fighters in against each other. But if all the zeros are on the fucking contract, I think at this point Chocolatito jumps at this chance, because if he can beat Bam Rodriguez, or at least be super competitive and lose a close competitive fight to Bam Rodriguez, where Estrada got fucking flatlined and destroyed, that also is great for his resume, even off a loss. If he beats Bam Rodriguez, he may be the best small fighter in boxing history, right? At this age, to beat this kind of opponent, I don't know if you could ever say there's another fighter in boxing history that was able to do something as significant as that. But taking on Bam obviously is a huge fight nonetheless, right? World title fight. Obviously, they've sparred, and people said the sparring was fucking incredible. Great sparring. Sure, I think Chocolatito is past his best. I would have preferred him to move up to bantamweight and try to become a 5-weight world champion and put himself into that illustrious group of fighters who become 5-weight world champions. There's less than 10 in boxing history, so that would have been historic as well. But if he takes on Bam, that tells you everything you need to know about him as a fighter. And then Janibek versus fucking Hamza Shiraz. My God, that shit is fucking dynamite. That's exactly what Janibek's needed. A fighter like this that UK, European fight fans are going to fucking go crazy for. Americans, they're ignorant to sports outside of America, so they're not going to care. But then again, they're going to say that the PBC Tank Davis, David Benavidez card is better than this. Better than this. Let me know in the comment section below. Which card do you think is better? I think it's fucking goes without saying, but people all have different opinions. Who is the next king of 147? Obviously, Boots. Boots will fucking kick the shit out of Devin Haney. I can't understand why Golden Boy won't just have Oscar Duarte and William Zepeda fight each other instead of against boring fighters. Yeah, I can understand that too, but the reality is, for Zepeda, it's a step back. He should beat Duarte easily. I also don't understand Eddie Hearn speaks on Tank but won't entertain the possibility of Sugar Nunez Tank fight. What do you mean? How is Eddie Hearn going to entertain a Tank versus Nunez fight? Tank Davis is the A side. El Mendez says, my goodness, you really have something against black people. I've been subbed to you for a month and all you do is complain about these guys. What's the deal with you and them? I don't have a problem with black boxers. I have a problem with black American fans who need to discredit Mexican fighters, Asian fighters, Caucasian European fighters, all to build up fighters. Literally, I just praised Boots Ennis. I just praised Bud Crawford. So I don't really know what you're saying. I just said that Boots Ennis fucking destroys Devin Haney. So I'm hating on Devin Haney to fanboy Boots Ennis? Come on, man. Come on, man. You live in America and you watch YouTube. You don't see the hate and racial narrative that most of these big channels on YouTube consistently push. Fan and the LDBC, Ego, Dante's Boxing Nation, consistently. You watch them. Don't lie. Don't come here and cap like fucking you don't watch these channels and how everything is racially fucking biased. I'm just trying to fucking give you the opposite perspective. And then it's up to you to make your mind up. Hard Recoil says Turkey's undercards aren't as big as the beginning. Well, I don't know about that. The card I just read, you say those undercards aren't good? I mean, come on, man. Come on, man. You got Shiraz fighting for unified middleweight titles as the 5th fight on this card. But they're not as big? Okay. The fight is better than Tank fighting Roach, for sure. Virgil should fight Crawford. I don't know why Crawford actually doesn't sell. Well, that's the fight I think it makes the most sense. I thought if Crawford fought Tim Tszyu, unified titles, and then fought Ortiz, those were two of the biggest fights you could do. And if somehow, some way, Spence was able to beat Funduro, then you could do the rematch between Crawford and Spence, which would be, I don't know if it'd be bigger, but it'd obviously be a big fight nonetheless. Spence is a cherry pick but locally, a fight with him and Virgil would be huge in Texas. I know that's what people are saying as well, but isn't that fight past its due date unless Spence beats Van Durl, right? If he beats Van Durl, okay, now that fight makes sense once again. But wouldn't it make more sense if Virgil beat Crawford and Spence beat Van Durl, and then you did that fight for unification? Now it becomes a super fight you could literally put in Dallas Cowboy Stadium and maybe beat Canelo Alvarez, capacity fight. No, you're wrong. Virgil is no star. He's not even known here in my country. Uh, Somehow, I don't even know if you're really who you say you are, buddy. What's up with the IBF and these ridiculous Mandos? Karen should have had to fight 2 title eliminators to get a Boots rematch. Better BF Fien Opataya versus Chinkara. These fights suck. Garden Snake, go check out my video. What's the similarities between these fighters? Karen, Eifert, Chinkara, they're all promoted by the same German promoter. The IBF is doing what they always did, collecting payola to elevate fighters into number 1 mandatory positions. Same old shit. I like Mandos, but they need to be more credible. Yes, they do. Fighters literally need to beat guys to elevate themselves into these fucking fights so that we know who they are and we're excited to see them step up and take a challenge, right? Like we've been talking about on this whole live today. We've been talking about tons of fighters we want to see step up and take on a challenge. It's no different for IBF mandatories. Do you think the guy who just beat Inui's brother would be a live opponent for Nakatani? I don't think so. I thought Inui's brother should have beat him because he's way too basic and way too raw. But I'm surprised that he was able to overwhelm Inui's brother the way he did. Inui's brother spars with fucking the monster, right? You're not going to be in with a guy who's faster and is harder than him. So it sort of boggles my mind that he performed so well. And his first 2 rounds were very good. He looked like he was easily going to beat that guy. And then I don't know what happens. Brian Norman should have taken the 1.7 million. If he lost to Boots, he's going to have to move up to 154 anyway. So Norman could have still been the man at 147. Well, it's hard to walk away from, the biggest contract of your career in a fight that's going to make you a known fighter, to go fight some bum-ass opponent nobody's ever heard of for fucking $200,000 and act like somehow you won in that situation. What did you fucking win? Speak of which, Duarte stopped Jojo Diaz. Zepeda couldn't. I think Zepeda would beat Duarte. It would be a good fight, though. Oh, Zepeda fucking clearly beat the crap out of Jojo Diaz, pillar to post. Duarte ends up jumping on him after that guy gets beat up by Haney and then beat up by Zepeda. Hollow Ninja, thank you very much. You're a true boxing fan. Spence shouldn't be allowed to have a championship fight. That's all I'm saying. It's hard to justify a guy coming off of a knockout loss, a brutal knockout loss, jumping into a world title fight at a different weight class. And I said the same thing about Shakur Stevenson fighting that fucking guy Cordilla from fucking 130. So I'm keeping the same energy. Yet trying to act like this is similar to Lomachenko. How's it similar to Lomachenko? Lomachenko lost a controversial fight to Devin Haney and fought for a vacant title at the same weight class. But yet you can't talk to some of these people on YouTube because they're just stupid. I said black people. I've seen hate from the Italian Johnny Boy. That guy hates on us Mexicans and our fighters. But you don't see Mexican boxing channels Black American boxing channels hate on Mexican fighters. Everybody hates on fucking Canelo Alvarez. Go watch Bruce Vane. He hates on you because you're a Mexican. So come on, stop their cap. The IBF sucks. Why did they get it right with Murtazaliev? They didn't get it right. Murtazaliev literally was there for 4 years. He had a lot of opportunity to build himself into a fighter that beat Tim Tszyu. He still didn't fight the guy that was the guy he was chasing after, which was Charlo. And I think most people feel Charlo would have beat him because Charlo is not Tim Tszyu. He's a more complete fighter, a better fighter. I didn't even realize they were all represented by the same guy. Yo, Sean, what's up, Stringer from above? Is Chris Colbert all used up? All used up. All used up. Once he went against Deontay Wilder, his career was over. The Wilder curse. Johnny Combat is in the pen. I've heard that. Rick Glazer was saying Tim Tszyu is shot to pieces with no punch resistance left. Do you agree? Personally, I don't like just throwing away fighters after a loss, especially one that's 30 years old. Well, it's a little premature to say the guy's got no punch resistance based on one fight where he got caught beautifully by a great left hand. And basically, at that point, the fight was over, right? Like, Glazer should know better. To show that he's got no punch resistance, throw him in there with a bounce back cherry pick opponent who catches him with an overhand right, and the guy drops like a fucking tank. And at that point, we will say, oh, he's shot. He's got no punch resistance. The reality is, come on, no punch resistance. Let's fucking slow back, calm down. Fighters fucking got knocked out. Duran got knocked fucking out cold by fucking Roberto Duran. Should he have retired at that point because he had no punch resistance? That guy got fucking one shot, one punch, fucking KO'd, flat lined. So he got no punch resistance now. So maybe he should retire, right? Like, that kind of statement is just stupid. And, I like Glazer, but Glazer has got a lot of bad takes, like many people in boxing do. Who do you have winning, Virgil versus Boots? I got to favor Boots. I think Boots is an all-around better fighter. He's longer, faster, technically a more refined fighter. I like Ortiz, but at this point, I'm still not sure if this is the same Ortiz we were watching at 147. Tszyu is chinny. He's been knocked down by Terrell Guasha. Fighters get dropped, man. Like, this is boxing. What do we pretend? That if you get caught with a good shot, you're not going to get dropped? Like, what world do we fucking live in? Only Loma is expected to take on top fighters after a loss, even though he was criticized, for getting a world title fight coming off of a loss. Even though 99% of the time coming off of a controversial fight like that, he would have been elevated into a rematch. But of course, Devin Haney ran away from a Lomachenko rematch to go fight Prograis. Tim Tszyu's American debut in 2022, he was dropped first round by Guasha, but did come back to win on points. Second trip to America, Tim lost belt to Fundura. Third trip, annihilated by Bakram. But yet he wants to fucking become American so bad, he even moved to America. He's always been chinny. Duran got knocked out by Hearns. Tommy Hearns. I'm pretty sure I said Hearns in that statement. Tszyu was so overconfident, in my opinion, calling Bakram a step around opponent. Do you think Tim got too Americanized feeling himself? For sure he did. For sure he did. And even his dad said you shouldn't fight Russian opponents. Right? His dad literally said that. So his dad was even calling for this upset beforehand. So we can't be that shocked or that surprised. Speaking of pound for pound great fighters, obviously we know that Inouye just confirmed that he's going to be fighting Sam Goodman next, December 24th. Happy Christmas, or as I say in Canada, because Happy Christmas sounds stupid, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody. Japan is once again giving us a Christmas and New Year's present. What he said about the opponent is, he's an opponent I can't avoid if I'm going to defend my titles. My motivation going forward is to surpass my last fight's performance. And it's true. Sam Goodman is ranked number one by two sanctioning bodies, which means if you don't fight him, you're going to get stripped not just by one sanctioning body, but potentially by two, right? So you got to do what you got to do. When you are undisputed and you have all the belts and you're defending titles, unlike Bud Crawford, unlike Devin Haney, unlike Usyk, when you do that, then you don't have to worry about your mandatories because you're dropping your titles and moving in another direction. But if you're a guy who actually defends your titles, you need to fight your mandatories, whether you and me as boxing fans like it or not, right? Because we know the IBF is going to stick fucking a William Skull in there to fuck shit up. And nobody thinks that a Canelo Williams skull fight is worth making or fucking attractive or sells. And nobody wants to pay for it. But somehow that fight got made. Interesting enough, this weekend as well, we just saw Canelo Alvarez recently in Japan, obviously getting to know Inui on a more personal level. And we just had, of course, Turki Al-Sheikh, who was in Japan this week meeting Inui, the monster, as well. So that's a good omen. Obviously, having the money man in boxing meeting the monster. We can talk about them potentially working together, moving forward, making big fights. Obviously, Canelo, the face of American boxing, also being in Japan, talking to Inui. These are good omens, right? We don't know what's going to come from it, but on the outside looking in, you got to be impressed and happy about the possibility, about the potential that can happen because of these relationships and these connections. So I'm excited to see what happens between them. Yeah. Okay. Like, dude, you know who I meant. So why are you fucking worrying about a miss fucking spoke? People misspeak. It's normal. It's not unusual. None of this is scripted, right? It's off the cuff. So when you go off the cuff, you're going to uh, misspeak and say things sometimes that aren't what you intended. Tim's team seems to be cream puff yes men. Well, there seem to be people leading them in the wrong direction. Great Australian fighter that I liked, even though now I can't remember his name. One of Mike Tyson's favorite fighters, Jeff Fennick, said he needs to change his team, and I agree. I think Tim Tszyu can bounce back. I think he can beat guys like Arrow, Lubin, even Funduro rematch, middle of the pack guys. But I now believe he can't beat the top guys at 154. But who are the top guys at 154? No Limit really only has Tim basically. I'm not sure that's the best thing. Australia is taking a hit. Tim Tszyu, Paro, Goodman will all lose in 2024. Are you sure Paro's going to lose? Opataya will be the last man standing. I can't underestimate Paro. Even though I'm picking Hitchens to win, every time I pick against Paro, he always wins. So don't be surprised to see him win. Vasily Girov, I got to go back and watch some of his career. It kind of makes me wonder how a fight with Tony and Beterbiev would have played out. I don't know if you can compare fucking Vasily Girov to Beterbiev, though. Neri, Dahoney, Goodman aren't it. Junto. Well, Neri's a two-weight world champion. Donani was a world champion. Goodman is a two-sanctioning body, mandatory, who beat Reese Alim. Right? I don't like when these Americans come out and somehow act as if Goodman is a garbage opponent, but yet they're happy with Lamont Roach. Yet, to be fair, Lamont Roach's best win isn't necessarily any better than Goodman's best win. And Goodman is actually a 122-pound fighter. He's not moving up in weight to challenge the opponent, right? I mean, Reese Alim was the boogeyman of the 122-pound division. People literally were saying that fucking MJ and Stephen Fulton were ducking him. And who went in there and beat his ass? Sam Goodman, right? MJ, quality. I want to see an MJ fight. Hopefully that relationship with Turki Al-Sheikh can get Inui to go to Saudi Arabia to make a big fight to defend his titles versus MJ, right? That's a fight you can understand why you would go out of Japan, because the money is worthwhile. Hollow Ninja. Hope Bud can become undisputed by next year. 3-time. I hope so. Talk about legendary. Bud Crawford becoming a 3-weight undisputed champion. I mean, as real boxing fans, you got to praise a man for doing what's never been done before. Nick Ball. Well, Nick Ball's a marketable fight in the UK, but I don't know if anyone really believes Nick Ball fucking beats Inui. Stylistically, he's just fucking made to be beat. I think Beterbiev is way more heavy-handed than Girov, but they're somewhat similar in that they'll grind you down type guys. Best 3 opponents. I know what you mean. I wasn't trying to correct you. Opataya will salvage Australian boxing. I'd say Mirzaliev, Bud, Virgil, and Charlo. Yeah, we still got to see what version of Charlo's coming back after more than 2 years outside of the 154-pound division. But I definitely think Murtazaliev, Bud, and Charlo are in the conversation. As far as Virgil, I thought Virgil lost to Bohocuk. So I think the winner of Bohocuk Madrimov is above Virgil Ortiz, in my opinion. Yeah, I'd pick Better BF to beat Tony. I do think Hitchens is going to win, but hey, I was wrong. The last fight with Matias, maybe Limos got Hitchens ready for this fight. Well, but Limos is a very one-dimensional fighter compared to Paro, who's much more versatile. Um, and Limos beat fucking Hitchens. Hitchens is so lucky he's even in this position. It should really be fucking Paro versus fucking Limos, and actually a fight boxing fans would be far more interested in watching as well. Who's talking about Goodman? It sounds like you are gaslighting. Mendez, Reese Alim. Reese Alim was the boogeyman at 122 pounds. For a Mexican fighter, you should fucking be aware of these smaller weight classes because those are the only weight divisions your fighters really dominate in, right? So don't play ignorant. Reese Alim was a monster who was getting tons of praise, and a guy that the two unified champions were ducking. And then Sam Goodman went in there and beat his ass. And that's why Sam Goodman is now a two sanctioning body mandatory. Nobody's saying people are talking about Goodman. I'm putting in perspective. Who was talking about fucking Lamont Roach? Nobody. He was fighting on fucking Pro Box on his last fight. Jesus Ramos will beat Charlo. I don't know about that. Every time you bring up Sam Goodman, you attack Americans. Very confusing. Just trying to understand your logic. I'm attacking Americans? I'm pointing out exactly the narrative you're pushing now. Who's talking about Sam Goodman? I'm talking about who Sam Goodman beat to earn an Inouye fight. And truthfully, for Inouye, it doesn't matter fucking what Americans think because Americans are not the ones that are funding Inouye's career. So, but I know he's got to fight in America. Oh, I forgot about Madrimov. Why aren't Tank and Roach fighting in the DMV? That's the $100 question. That's fucking where I thought the fight obviously should have happened. But they know the money is in Texas. So that's why they're sending him to Texas. But it doesn't make sense to me. Tank is Baltimore, Roach is DC. I know. It doesn't make sense, but that's the PBC. Like when they started putting all their fights in what do you call it? New York City, in that not Madison Square Gardens, but the other one. And they just consistently put all their fights there because they knew it was marketable and they made money from it. So they just beat the dead horse. I get it. You beat the dead horse. Well, you can. How about Brandon Adams? He's going to fight Katsorakas. Great fight. But once again, that statement explains everything. Neither one of those two fighters is a top 10, 154-pound fighter. They're playing on the minor leagues. Literally, that's what this is. Pro box, minor league boxing. Canelo Alvarez is not a smaller fighter. He's the king of boxing. He's a small fighter. Al Mendez, put the pipe down, bro. Did you notice Tyson Fury and John Fury seem to be humbled now? I saw that, but I don't know how much I can think about that moving forward. Speaking of Mexican champions, Sinicia Estrada is retiring, so props to her. Obviously, she was a beautiful Latina who had a great career. It's unfortunate that it's been cut so short. Obviously, some hand injuries, I think, are what is leading her to retirement at this point of her career. We will see if she comes back later on, but I just wanted to give her a shout out because obviously she's leaving the game. Here we go, talking about Fury and Usyk. Usyk isn't playing. Usyk fucking killed this press conference with that whole hitman fucking look. Wow. What a man. What a man. He embodies that fucking role, right? Like he did it so well. And I think, to be fair, Fury is just playing his role. I think Fury is kind of happy that he doesn't need to put a clown ship on and he can motivate himself and stay focused. And I still am predicting that Fury is going to win the rematch, even though I was super stoked by seeing Usyk pull off this. I thought it was fucking excellent, excellent. This is definitely fucking the stamp of fucking elitism for his career. They say Estrada is ducking a rematch. How about Charles Conwell and Virgil Ortiz? If you saw my video breaking down my top 10 154-pound fighters, David, you would see exactly where both Conwell and Virgil rank on my list. So check it out. With that last girl, well, if she's having hand injuries, that's probably says a lot to do with it. How did Chris Mannix land? Is Chris Mannix having sex with fucking Siniesa Estrada? Okay. They work together, so I guess, you spend that kind of time together. She's a Latina who's trying to move up her station. So dating a white man, we've seen this kind of thing happen before. Look at what's her face from ESPN. Usyk is cool. I think the hitman look from Usyk. Fury's whole attitude has changed. He went from talking shit to trying to tickle him. I heard that. I heard that. I'm I'm very feel. Yes, the hitman suit was cold. Some funny press conferences last couple of days. Regis cooking Catterall's manager Sam Jones was hilarious. They're married. Oh, okay, nice. Wow, good for him. Congrats. I can't hate on people that connect, right? It's like Caleb Plant's wife, right? And him hooking up. It's like, opposites attract, man. That's why I live in Taiwan. Have you heard the excuses Drew Titan has for Usyk whooping Dubois? Aren't the reason he quit is because as a black man, he was terrified of the Polish people doing something to him. Well, can you be surprised that Drew Titan is somehow making fucking an English fighter because he's black into some racial narrative that relates to America? I mean, these guys were never supporters of fucking Dubois. Literally, the LDBC called him a fucking quitter. Called him a quitter after the Joyce fight. And now they're all for him. They're all down because, of course, they hate AJ because they're Deontay Wilder fanboys. So anything that downplays and diminishes AJ builds up Deontay Wilder in their eyes, right? I don't listen to fucking Drew Titan because that dude is full of shit. Is Fury coming in bigger, you think, for the rematch or same body style? It looks as if he's coming in similar, but hopefully with better cardio and endurance. Usyk looks like he could be a serial killer. Zurdo Ramirez is a cruiserweight champion. Soon will be the second Mexican heavyweight champ. Yeah, don't hold your breath for that one. Don't hold your breath for that one. Sugar Hill needs a win after the Jarrett Anderson getting destroyed. He does. I think Andy Ruiz has a better chance of becoming a two-time heavyweight champion than Zurdo has of becoming a heavyweight champion. Zurdo's going to get knocked the fuck out in his unification fight with Jay Opataya. True Titan. I am ashy, very ashy. Deontay Wilder was cool. Yeah. When he wasn't twerking, he was cool. When he started fucking being the voice of his people, then he was just playing a role. When he was just a father and a man and fighting for his kids and his family and just showing his personality, he was cool. But unfortunately, once he tied connections with the LDBC, it was fucking the beginning of the end. Kind of like Devin Haney. Kind of like Errol Spence. Isn't it funny? They say, go woke, go broke. As a boxer, if you go LDBC, you obviously finish your career, right? It's the ruination of your boxing career by connecting with fucking the LDBC. It's been shown and tested time and time again. But yeah, I mean, this should be a great fight. I'm looking forward to Usyk, obviously, versus Fury. Should be a great matchup. Zerto might not beat Billum Smith. I'm kind of leaning to Billum Smith to win. I really did not think Billum Smith was going to beat um, Rappaport. I like Rappaport. Good fighter, good power. I thought he was going to win. But unfortunately for him, Billum Smith did far better in the rematch. And Billum Smith is feeling himself, obviously coming back, winning a fight that he lost the first time, being a champion. So I would not be surprised at all if he beat Zerto. Voice of his people, huh? Apparently, that's what they were saying. Voice of the culture. Sorry, that's the way you say it. Voice of the culture, right? So he's the voice of the culture. He's doing it for the culture. Here we go. Speaking of other big giant fucking cards coming out of Saudi Arabia, I mean, I don't know why people still go out of their way to somehow play down and hate on how I'm being racist if I'm saying that people said Wilder is doing it for his culture. That's what people said. So me stating what people said is being racist. I think you're a little too woke, a little too sensitive. Hopefully, you don't live in the South because that might be difficult for you. But here we go, another card, and one you should love. Latino night in Saudi Arabia. Zurdo Ramirez versus Billum Smith. This shit is dynamite, right? People should be super excited about this. It's a unification fight for cruiserweight titles, WBA, WBO. And then, of course, you have Ramirez versus Barboza. This is a great 140-pound fight. Great fight. Obviously, eliminator for the WBO title. Whoever wins should, in theory, get a Teofimo Lopez world title fight. But we know Teo is not interested in taking on these opponents because he's afraid he's going to get beat, right? Which is why he's trying to split contract from Top Rank ESPN and go get knocked out by Bud Crawford at 154 pounds, as if that fucking makes sense. I guess you can say I went for greatness and I got KO'd, kind of like Mikey Garcia fighting Spence. It don't make fucking any sense at all, but okay. And it's funny, right? John Boxing. You love when fucking Mikey Garcia went up 2 weight classes to get knocked out. Oh, he didn't get knocked out. He went the distance. But then you don't want to see Lopez go up 2 weight classes to get knocked out by Bud Crawford. I would think you'd want that even more based on the shit he's been saying. But I think Ramirez and Barboza, great fight, right? It looked like everyone was ducking Barboza, but in his last fight, he did not look that great. Ramirez, obviously, has not been the same Ramirez that he once was when he was steamrolling and dominating people. So it's a fight that's probably happening at the right time. Then, of course, mentioned earlier, Zepeda versus Tevin Farmer. People say, why is this fight happening? Well, Tevin Farmer is an ex-world champion, a slick fighter who uses slick counterpunching and defensive acumen to stay out of punching range of aggressive punchers, right? So in theory, this should be a very good tune-up fight for a guy like Zepeda before stepping in to face a guy like Shakur. Obviously, Farmer is not Shakur, but you got to fight somebody similar, and that's what they're doing. So it makes a lot of sense. Then you got Calazo, the great Puerto Rican baby champion, taking on Nimtrong, right? The great Thai fighter, right? Who's the longest reigning 105-pound champion in boxing. Great fight. Two of the best fighters in the division easily. Ring Magazine title obviously on the line. WBA, WBO. Great fight. And then, of course, Duarte, who people were saying should be fighting Zepeda. Well, he's fighting Kevin Sims Jr. for the WBA International Super Lightweight title. Obviously, you win this fight. Potentially, you put yourself in position for a Shakur Stevenson fight, unless Shakur gets beat by Zepeda. And then you would get exactly what you wanted. Duarte versus Zepeda for WBA. Sorry. So that would be Tank Davis. Oh, okay. Sims and Duarte as a potential Tank Davis opponent. Don't get me wrong. I think Duarte fight and Tank Davis would be fun while it lasted. Sims Jr., we have to see what he does against Duarte. If he looks great against Duarte, maybe he would be a good opponent. But neither of those guys are name opponents that you want to put on pay-per-view, right? And that's the problem. Tank Davis wants to do pay-per-view. So you need opponents that sell pay-per-view. Zepeda and Duarte doesn't need to be on pay-per-view. That could be on normal fight boxing easily. I live in Tijuana, home of Tornado Antonio Margarito. Oh, so you're a cheater. Okay. Where are we? Till this day. Wilder was pure cringe. That video of him accusing Fury of using aid weights was the ominous music in the background. Still makes my skin crawl. I think Munguia, Pacheco should fight each other since Berlanga is going live to live off the Canelo payday. Well, hopefully he's not going to live off the Canelo payday because I want to see Berlanga Munguia, and then we could see Pacheco fight the winner. That would be fantastic. Barboza, Ramirez both looked trash recently. Yeah, that's what I said. Does Jesus Ramo even fight anymore? Well, he's a PBC fighter, so infrequently. Collazo is a wide favorite over that guy. Sims Jr. sucks. Hey, don't be a racist, El Mendez. Don't be a racist. You can't say that black fighters suck. That's racist on YouTube. So you may be reported. You may be canceled. So watch what you say. As the great Ice-T once said, freedom of speech. Just watch what you say. So let me just quickly look here. Collazo versus my man, Thai fighter. The real big tragedy is that that Thai fighter didn't fight Munsuri when they were both two of the best fighters in the division. That could have been a huge Thai fight, unification fight. But because Thai doesn't do that, they'd rather have two champions that cherry pick as opposed to make one great fight. That fight never happened, which is very unfortunate. Yeah, Ramos fought on the Tank Frank Martin card. Yeah, that's not saying too much. He just fought the same guy that Telez fought, and Telez did a better job beating him. Just saying. So here we are, Nim Chong. Come on, Nim Chong. Thamanun Nim Chong. I could not imagine dating a Thai girl because trying to pronounce her family's names would be the death of me. There you go. 25-0, 9 KOs, right? 34 years old. Obviously, he's been in with some good opponents. Beat Munsuri in 2022 after Munsuri already had losses. Keep scrolling, beat Toto Landero, Ray Loreto. Yeah. I mean, when you look at his resume, he was fighting a lot of what you expect Thai fighters to fight. Literally coming off of a win against Alex Winwood, 4-0. He's now fighting Collazo, who people really hype up a lot. 10-0, 7 KOs for a 105-pound fighter. That's pretty impressive because usually those guys have no power. 27 years old. And you look at who he's been fighting, already much better. Melvin Jerusalem, currently a world champion right now. In very short fights, he was fighting legitimate opponents in his fourth fight. Last fight, 4-5-2-0-3. Ramos knocked that dude out still, and he got cut from a headbutt. Where do you rank Juan Manuel Marquez amongst the ATGs? I love Juan Manuel Marquez. Out of all the fighters from Mexico during that era, he's the one I rate the least. I prefer Barrera. I always like Barrera a lot more. And now, in hindsight, I've really started to appreciate Morales a lot. Juan Manuel Marquez, he would be third on that list amongst those three Mexican greats. So, there he is. And also, the hate that he consistently puts for Canelo just makes him look like the Mexican version of fucking Andre Ward, right? He's like the Mexican Andre Ward. It's pathetic that somebody can be so negative about one of their own countrymen, irrationally so. At least Andre Ward is hating on a Mexican, not an American. But Jesus, Marquez versus Morales, we never got. A shame. Yeah, definitely a shame. I think Morales beats him. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Barrera beat JMM and got robbed. I love Barrera. Barrera was a great fighter. I loved when he beat Prince Nassim fucking up. That was great. It was great for the culture. It was great for the culture, the boxing culture, because of course I appreciate Nassim and the antics, the power, the pomp and fucking circumstance, kind of like Nigel Benn, right? Or sorry, not Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank Sr., who also wearing a monocle and fucking a top hat. Those English dudes, man, when they play fucking up the stuff, they play it way too much that it just becomes cheesy as fuck. So I was happy when he got his ass exposed and beat by Barrera, which I predicted. Who do you have as fighter of the year and KO of the year? This year, if Usyk beats Fury for the second time, easily, he's going to be number one. Easily. If he loses to Fury, then I'd put Daniel Dubois at number one. For KO of the year, I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to specifics like that. I know a lot of people are talking about the Angelo Leo knockout. Um, Outside of that, I'm sure there's been a lot of really fucking sensational knockouts, but none that I can obviously think of off the top of my head because I ain't that smart. My memory ain't that good. Yeah, my uncle is also from Mexico and he really hates Canelo. Fuck. It's funny when people talk about how Canelo's loved because he's Mexican by all Mexicans, which is not true. A lot of Mexicans loved Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. more than they love Canelo. And that dude was cancer for boxing. But yet, this is how boxing fans are. Irrational, right? Irrational. Robsy Ramirez versus Brandon Benitez was a great KO. Can't remember it. Jang over Wilder, yeah. Speaking of older fights, who would you favor in a Canzanales versus Inui fight, Sean? That would be a fucking great fight. Canzanales, when he was at his peak, was Lomachenko-esque, was Bam Rodriguez-esque, right? That's how good he was. That's the kind of style he was using, which was fucking excellent. If you've never seen the peak fights of Canzanales, you go watch those fights and you will really appreciate how good he was. He didn't have a long reign against top fighters. So if you caught Inui and him fighting at that perfect peak, it would have been a really, really interesting fight. I'd have to go with Inui, but I was a big Canzanales fan. Good fighter, good fighter. All I know is when I was a kid and I watched him in his peak, I was mesmerized by what he was doing in the ring. People are so critical of Mexican fighters, always shitting on them, talking about how they're just one-dimensional and they all fight the same, which is a stupid fucking statement. When you have a country as big as Mexico with the fucking population and the diversity of locations, fighters are going to fight really differently, specifically from different regions and different areas. New York style, Philly style, right? It's no different than Mexico. I know he is Mexican American, but okay, nonetheless. If Bud can become 3-time undisputed and get the Canelo fight and win, that's 4-time. Well, he's not going to be 4-time undisputed because Canelo only has 3 belts, something no one else will accomplish, maybe Inui, the GOAT. He's definitely putting himself in that GOAT conversation above Floyd Mayweather as far as accomplishments. But if we want to use John Boxing's rationale, belts and accomplishments don't mean anything. It's all about quality of opposition. And to be fair, while he may have these accomplishments above Floyd, his level of competition may not be as good as Floyd Mayweather's. may not. Sorry, there's some lag right now. Huh? Okay, it's gone. Robsy charged up that uppercut before throwing it. Yeah, Canelo is pretty hated here too. The irony is that Chavez Sr. actually fought a lot of ice cream truck drivers, unlike Canelo. Facts. That's why I have Canelo the number one Mexican fighter of all time. I would prefer to say Salvador Sanchez, but unfortunately, I can't say that. Once again, lagging. I don't know why. Because obviously he died too early, right? But during his time, I think he's a better fighter overall than Canelo Alvarez. But, short period of time. You've probably forgotten more about boxing than I'll ever know. Oh, I'm sure when you become old, you'll know it too. Are you pumped for Jake Paul, Mike Tyson? No. No, I'm not. I heard Mike is KOing Spartan partners like in the 80s, but they probably are just saying that for promotions. I'm sure. I like Mike Tyson. Big fan. Obviously, I was a huge Evander Holyfield fan, not so much of a Mike Tyson fan. But I really hate this whole fight because there's no way Mike Tyson looks good in this fight, right? I understand the money, him and Jake Paul. I understand the fights underneath where people who literally deserve the opportunity are getting the opportunity. So hats off to Jake Paul for making fighters' dreams come true. Hats off to Netflix for putting on what could potentially be the biggest pay-per-view fight. Is it going to be pay-per-view? I guess free. Or one of the biggest fights in boxing history, even though it's a circus act. But to be fair, and a lot of boxing fans today, they fail to remember that boxing in the past was also a fucking circus act. George Foreman fighting 5 dudes in Canada in one night. Muhammad Ali fighting a fucking Japanese judo fucking master, right? There's been all kinds of crazy circus shit in boxing throughout its history. So why would we think it's any different now? Canelo messed up Jermell fight for Bud. I'm old, kinda. I just turned 42 last Thursday. Congratulations. Happy birthday. 42. I can't even remember being 42. Never heard you break down the differences in styles based on different regions. Interesting. But it's true, right? I mean, gyms in cities have primary styles that the trainers train, right? Kronk's gym was different than other gyms. They had a primary style, right? So, of course, in Mexico, a big giant fucking country, you're going to have different styles, different fighters. I mean, when we look at Juan Manuel Marquez, Barrera, and fucking Morales, all different fighters, very different stylistically. I mean, Barrera, he changed the style, right? He was a very aggressive Mexican style fighter who then became more of a boxer puncher later on when he got knocked out in his first big step up fight and then sort of reinvented himself and came back a much more complete fighter. I keep telling people Bud could have been at 160 by now, could have been undisputed in 4 times already. Sean, where did you sit for Jack Johnson versus James J. Jeffries? Wasn't that fight in Australia? I didn't fucking get no boat ticket fucking to go all the way to Australia to watch that fight. What are you, crazy? I had a job. You can't just fucking jump on a boat for fucking 2 months and go watch a boxing match. Come on, dude. Come on. Nobody's got the time for that shit. They talk like buying tickets and getting hotels and airplane tickets now is so inconvenient. You guys are old. I'm 23. Well, I'm sure there's a whole range of people. See, that's the whole thing about the world. People are all different ages. So, that's part of the charm, right? Young people introduced me to APT, Apata by Bruno Mars and Rosie. And then younger people learn about the history of life and sports and how they shouldn't believe everything they hear on CNN, right? So, it's a trade-off. I'm cool and stylish in the office because I'm listening to K-pop And you guys know about something that maybe you didn't know beforehand, like Israel and fucking the Middle East did not just start fucking happening yesterday. And that Russia is not bad because they invaded Ukraine. It was a play from the Americans, right? It's interesting the things we can learn. But I'm going to go feed my dog and kick back. Thanks everyone for jumping in. As always, I appreciate it. Hollow Ninja, you the man. Thank you very much for your contributions. I appreciate it. So does Lily, even though she looks underwhelmed, but that's pretty much her normal state. Oh, there she is. Okay, big stretch. Big stretch. Good one. Nice one. Joe Embiid said he isn't playing any back-to-back games after signing almost a $200 million contract. What do you think? He's fucking garbage. He was always garbage. Like, that's why I haven't give Philadelphia any props to fucking win the East or win the fucking title this year. Because that dude is guaranteed going to be fucking injured. He's trying to play 42 games this year so that he's healthy for the playoffs. He ain't going to be fucking healthy for the playoffs. The dude's fucking never going to be healthy. Philadelphia wasted their money on him. He's a great player who's never going to fucking live up to his potential, right? Boston looks great. New York potentially could be their main rivals. Outside of that, I don't really rate Philly. I don't really rate Milwaukee. I don't really rate Miami. So if New York doesn't up their game and fucking give Boston some real trouble, then I think Boston's easily going to fucking slide right in. The best player on that team is their point guard who led them last year. Paul George and Embiid both going to be out consistently all fucking year. I could have predicted that fucking from day one. Oak City looks great. You see Oak City next year, they got 4 number 1 draft picks. 4 number 1 draft picks, man. Chet is going to be a beast this year. Well, you get Chet and fucking my Canadian brethren, but the problem is they still needed a big man. He's hurt, right? The guy they got from New York, and they still need more depth in scoring. Even though they're a good team, they got good complementary pieces, but I don't know if they really got scoring off the bench. OKC is going to be a problem. To be fair, in the West, I like Minnesota, not because of Randall. That guy's fucking garbage truck juice. But I think fucking Ant-Man is going to be MVP this year. Calipari and Arkansas just beat Kansas in an exhibition about an hour ago. Oh, good. I'll check that out. I'm sure it's on YouTube. I wanted to see Calipari's squad. It looks good. I want to see Kentucky as well. I watched Kentucky. Kentucky's team looks good. No stars, but fucking great shooters. I watched UConn. UConn looks good. The guy that comes from the same school as the Duke guy looks great. And of course, Duke looks good. And those 2 number 1 signings from Duke both look great as well. Yeah, Kentucky looks good. It came out Bronny James will go to G League. You got to go to G League. They're trying to hype up fucking LeBron James playing with his son. That's probably the last time we'll ever see them play together in a 3-minute stint, which fucking lived up to nothing. Gordie Howe played with 2 or 3 of his sons in the fucking NHL. Played fucking till he was 50. Gordie Howe is a fucking legend. A fucking ATG. Cooper Flag is him. Cooper Flag is him. Cooper Flag looked good. And what's great about him is he's a guy that can fill in every role, right? He doesn't need to score all the points. He'll play tough D, rebound, pass the ball. He'll literally do whatever it takes to win. And I think that's what happened last year. His high school team went undefeated in the United States, playing every single great team in the States. They beat them all, right? And his high school team was stacked. And I think playing with such great players, you learn to be unselfish early on, which unfortunate for a lot of these young players that come into the pros, they're fucking selfish. I don't watch much hockey. Didn't know what What about Howe? Oh, that about Howe. Gordie Howe, man. Gordie Howe was considered the ATG until obviously Wayne Gretzky, right? And he played with three of his sons. I'm pretty sure three: Mark, Steven, and then one more, right? All three of his sons obviously became NHLers, and I think Mark was also an All-Star as well. So come on, fuck LeBron James and his kid. His kid only got that job because fucking his dad was the GM. That's it. But if you want to know more about basketball, I also have basketball lives. Maybe I'll do a live uh, once the season starts. Well, I guess the season officially has started now. But once college basketball starts, maybe then I'll start doing more lives for basketball as well. But thanks everyone for jumping in. Peace out, and I will see you next time. Later.